recovered. That was just on Monday. The American athlete here to have a go at London. This is the world record holder from Switzerland over this distance, Manuela Schär. She didn't start last year with illness. She didn't finish in Boston on Monday due to a puncture. And she'll be out for some revenge here today, I'm sure. Katalin de Bruyne is the defending champion. She won last year in a championship record. She didn't have to face the likes of Manuela Schär. Madison Rosario, they DNS'd with illness. This is Daniel Romanchuk of the USA, very, very close to causing an upset last year. Went with Marcel Hug for the whole race, couldn't quite get past him. Now, this man is a Paralympic British superstar. Third last year in a competitive sprint finish to give him his 21st podium here at the London Marathon. But this is the man to beat this morning. All the other men have got to hope that Marcel Hug is carrying a little bit of fatigue from that championship course record he powered himself to in Boston last week. But Marcel Hug says he's recovered and he's slept fine this week. He could be on for that third consecutive title today.
And we can see Gordon Perry there, winner of the first ever wheelchair race in 1983. Some 40 years ago, we're celebrating a lot of anniversaries this year at the TCS London Marathon. And Gordon gets our wheelchairs underway, and that is the official start of the 2023 London Marathon. It's amazing to see how the chairs have changed over that 40 years, isn't it, Hannah, and how technology has developed.
We were talking about this morning. It's a big talking point in the ambulant events, the shoe technology. But when we were looking at pictures of what Gordon Perry was racing in 40 years ago, it took him around about 3 hours to complete the marathon course. Our athletes today, the men we'd expect to come in round about 1 hour 20, the women round about 1 hour 30. So the technological developments have been astounding in the wheelchairs. They're very streamlined. They're very pricey as well. It's a big thing to be able to get yourself an elite racing wheelchair. I think, is that the women on the right-hand side? Because that'd be, I'm powering away already, but it was Susanna Scaroni of the United States said in the press conference yesterday, she still believes their seating position in the chair, that's what's key to pushing faster and achieving those faster times. But there's a lot of carbon, they're like road racing bikes, aren't they? They're carbon, they're very, very light, and there's a lot of refinement of the technology.
Yeah, you can see the chairs there, and as you say, Han, they have developed over the years, but as you quite rightly say, it is down to that seating position, which I always find amazing, how they sustain that position, that strong core and the strong arms to push themselves around that course. And I guess with technology developing, even the streamline, the hats, the helmets that they wear, everything, the finer details that go into it to make sure they're as fast as they possibly can on the course, on the day. And it's, like say, 50% faster than they used to be some 40 years ago. So lots of improvements there. I see David Weir's got that Hoob suit on, that streamlined suit. He's tucked in there in third position already. And this will be quite a fast section, I think, this first 5K. We know it's downhill, so they may take advantage of that. And it looks like it's going to be a cracking race because straight away we've got some of the leading athletes right up at the front.
So it did look like Susanna Scaroni of the United States had separated herself in that women's field, but she's going to get caught up in the men's field here, perhaps trying to put herself in a good position to get towed along to a fast time. But this is Tomoki Suzuki of Japan in the lead at the moment. He won the 2020 Tokyo Marathon in a course record, so he's got the caliber to be at the front of this field. He's at the moment leading from Daniel Romanchuk. See the American athlete in second there with a sky blue helmet, a bit of red on the front. David Weir with his black helmet, Union Jack flag. And we have got Marcel Hug sitting there in fifth place at the moment. And these athletes just settling into a pace here. Suzuki perhaps maybe choosing the better line. I always think this section, this first 5K section, the roads aren't as smooth as you might like for a wheelchair athlete. There's a lot of street furniture there as well. They've got to keep their wits about them.
Yeah, I seen that in Manchester last week. I was on the side of the Manchester Marathon, and there was a few little accidents, and we've seen it in Boston with the punctures to the wheels as well. You know, the courses, they are as smooth as they can be, but these are just the normal roads, the normal streets of London that they're pushing round. So, you know, they've got to be aware of that. And we were talking last night about people carrying puncture repair kits and whether they do that. And we saw it in the major last week in Boston. We may see it again today.
As with all our athletes this morning, they will start in the Blackheath and Greenwich Park, head into this fast 5 kilometres. This is east away from central London. They'll then turn back on themselves and make their way towards Cutty Sark. That landmark will hit them at around about 10 kilometres. Then continue on their way towards central London, heading towards the iconic Tower Bridge. They'll cross over to the other side of the River Thames. Then make their way towards the Isle of Dogs, through Canary Wharf and the financial district. They'll take in Rainbow Row at Limehouse before they get towards the business end of racing. They'll head along the embankment and see Big Ben looming in front of them. They turn onto Birdcage Walk, swing round St James's Park in front of Buckingham Palace, and then into the final stretch along the Mall, where they will complete their 26.2 course.
Seems such a long way away, doesn't it, from now? But they are settling early into this 5K. As you mentioned, Hannah, it is a quick 5K section. They go downhill and then they'll make the way back towards Central for the first time. So they're actually going away towards Woolwich Arsenal as we speak, one of the secret cities of London from the wartime. And it will just settle into an early pace and they will start to take position. And we were speaking about the drafting in wheelchair racing. Is it similar to cycling? Do we see that? We certainly seen it last year and it was a little bit controversial. I remember Tanni Gray-Thompson speaking about that, whether it's kind of ethical to sit in behind your competitors, but wonder what tactics they employ today.
It was definitely a tactic from Daniel Romanchuk last year. It was try and hang on to Marcel Hug for as long as he can. This is a much larger group than I was perhaps expecting here in the men's elite wheelchair race. Could it be that Marcel Hug was perhaps bluffing, that maybe he is tired after that course record performance in Boston on Monday? He's sitting there in 4th at the moment, but I think when we think about drafting here in the wheelchair race, for me, Lewis, yes, they're not going as fast as people are in road racing on bikes, but they are going quick, and you just got to look at the body position. You know, a wheelchair with someone in it is wider than a race bike, and there's got to be a drafting capacity there.
Yeah, and as we see it with the women, they seem to be a little bit more spread out. You know, they've got to negotiate those speed bumps as well, something to negotiate. And when you mentioned about Boston last weekend, that's interesting, Hannah, because Boston is a tough course. It's a point-to-point course, but there's lots of hills. So those climbs, those downhills, I'm just interested to see how much that's taken out the athletes who are trying to do back-to-back races, not just in the space of a week. We're talking 6 days, and that doesn't include the travel. You know, they're traveling back from the States to the United Kingdom, and I always find that fascinating how our wheelchair athletes are able to recover and do many, many more events.
Perhaps back to business as usual. Marcel Hug getting himself into the lead here. Looks like Jets Platz in the red jersey just behind him. He picked up, I think he was maybe about the top 5 last year or so. Took a slightly rogue racing line through Birdcage Walk. Jed Platz, I'm sure he would have learned from that, and he'll rectify that as we move into the closing stages. But at the moment, we've got a lead group of 6 with Marcel Hug. Just having a look around him, seeing what's going on. You can see the blue line on the road here. That's the shortest route for the marathon. We will see our ambulant athletes stick to that like glue. But the wheelchair athletes, they sometimes have to take a bit of a wider curve around the corners. They have got the wheels, you can see they're angled well to give a stable base for the wheelchair, but they still need to be really careful as they approach the corners, particularly if they're going at speed.
I think you've called it right, Hannah. I think we're going to see a little bit of slow races in the wheelchair races today. People may be carrying a little bit of fatigue. As we say that, though, the women's race seems to be full steam ahead, and actually they're catching some of the men and maybe taking a little bit of draft in there as well. So the females are clearly going after it. The men seems to be a little bit of a tactical affair. We can see Scaroni at the front of that race, pushing the pace hard, and people tagging in behind her. You can see Shaz sat in 3rd place there in the women's race. But there are 4 clear. And just avoiding those potholes on the road. You can see they have to navigate around and then straight back onto that blue line, which is interesting, isn't it? They kind of want to stick to that racing line, but if they see something in the road that's maybe going to cause them a little bit of trouble, then they will avoid those and try and get the best possible line on the road as opposed to the racing line itself.
So just coming up on 18 minutes here in the men's wheelchair race. They won't be too far off the 10-kilometre mark, so they have taken that hairpin bend and they're heading back towards London. We thought there could be a bit of a headwind in this section when we were looking at the weather yesterday, but we saw some pictures of the flags on the finishing straight and at the start, and it does look very, very still here in London, so perhaps it's not as bad to be at the front pushing, and Marcel Hug is very comfortable taking a leading role in these men's wheelchair races across the world. It was interesting to hear David Weir say in the press conference yesterday that he just couldn't see past Marcel Hug for the win. There is the element in these wheelchair races of those technical difficulties, but I do think, as we said on the start line, the rest of these men have got to hope that Marcel Hug has not recovered from Boston. But they're having a go, and this is what I really like. We've got Suzuki still in there, Romanchuk at the back, so it does look like David Weir of Great Britain has dropped off this group of four ever so slightly, perhaps is sensing there's a real push on here for Marcel Hug. And I think we saw this last year with Daniel Romanchuk. He just kind of went, I've just got to go with him, and see what happens. But that is much